Marcus Thompson adjusted his tie one final time as he stepped out of the towering glass headquarters of Meridian Industries. As CEO of one of the city's most successful tech companies, he was accustomed to long days, but tonight felt different. Dark clouds had been gathering all afternoon, and the weather reports warned of a severe storm system moving through the area. The parking garage buzzed with the usual evening exodus of employees rushing to beat the weather home. Marcus nodded politely to the security guards and janitors still working their shifts, though he rarely took time to learn their names. His mind was already on tomorrow's board meeting and the quarterly projections that would determine the company's expansion plans. The elevator descended to the executive parking level, where his sleek black sedan waited. As he approached the vehicle, Marcus noticed the janitorial staff working overtime to secure loose items around the garage. Among them was Robert Williams, a quiet man in his 50s who had been cleaning the building for nearly a decade. Robert worked methodically, emptying trash bins and mopping floors with the same careful attention he brought to his job every day. Few people knew that Robert was putting his son through college on his custodial salary, working double shifts when necessary to cover tuition costs. The CEO had perhaps exchanged a dozen words with Robert in all their years sharing the same building. As Marcus reached for his car door handle, he heard rapid footsteps echoing through the concrete structure. A young man was running toward him, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The teenager appeared to be in his late teens, wearing a delivery uniform that suggested he worked for one of the local courier services. His face showed genuine concern and urgency as he approached the expensive vehicle. Marcus paused, his hand still on the door handle, unsure whether this young man posed a threat or simply needed directions. The contrast between them was stark, the impeccably dressed executive and the working-class teenager whose uniform showed the wear of a long day's labor. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as the storm's electrical activity intensified outside. Through the small windows near the ceiling, Marcus could see the first drops of rain beginning to fall. The garage felt eerily quiet except for the distant hum of ventilation systems and the soft sounds of the cleaning crew going about their work. Robert had noticed his son's arrival and was watching from across the garage, his expression unreadable. The moment stretched between Marcus and the approaching teenager, filled with the weight of assumptions and the unknown intentions that would soon change everything for everyone involved. "Sir, don't get in that car," the young man called out breathlessly as he reached Marcus. The CEO instinctively stepped back from his vehicle, his executive training kicking in as he assessed the potential threat. The teenager's eyes were wide with genuine alarm, not malice, and his body language suggested urgency rather than aggression. Marcus found himself caught between skepticism and curiosity as he studied the young man's face. There was something earnest in his expression that gave the CEO pause, even as his mind raced through possible scenarios. Was this an attempted carjacking, a prank, or something else entirely? "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Marcus replied, maintaining his distance while keeping his tone measured. The young man was clearly out of breath from running across the garage, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool evening air. His delivery uniform bore the logo of Quick Run Courier Service, a company that Marcus knew served many businesses in the downtown area. The teenager's hands were empty except for a small flashlight, which he held loosely at his side. His concern appeared genuine, but Marcus had learned to be cautious in his position, especially when approached by strangers in isolated locations like parking garages. "The brake lines," the young man said, pointing toward the front of Marcus's sedan. "I was delivering a package to the building next door when I saw someone messing with your car about 20 minutes ago. They had tools, and they were working underneath it near the front wheels." The teenager's words came quickly, tumbling over each other in his haste to explain. "I thought it was weird because it was late, and the guy looked around real suspicious-like before he started working. When he finished, he wiped everything down and left in a hurry. I got a bad feeling about it, so I came over to check." Marcus felt his skepticism warring with a growing sense of unease. The young man's story seemed far-fetched, but his genuine distress was difficult to dismiss. The CEO glanced toward his car, then back at the teenager. "You're saying someone sabotaged my vehicle?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications. If true, It suggested that Marcus had enemies willing to resort to deadly methods. If false, it raised questions about this young man's motivations for approaching him with such an elaborate story. The teenager nodded emphatically, his expression growing more urgent as he realized the CEO was wavering between belief and doubt. From across the garage, Robert had begun walking toward them, his cleaning cart forgotten as he recognized his son's voice. The older man's face showed a mixture of pride and concern as he watched his boy trying to help a stranger. Robert knew his son's character. David had always been the type to speak up when he saw something wrong, even when it might be easier to look the other way. As the custodian approached, Marcus began to see the family resemblance in their earnest expressions and the way they both carried themselves with quiet dignity despite their humble circumstances. David Williams pulled out his phone and activated its flashlight function, gesturing toward the front of Marcus's car. "Look, I can show you what I mean," he said, dropping to one knee beside the vehicle's front wheel. Marcus hesitated for a moment before joining the young man on the concrete floor, his expensive suit suddenly seeming less important than understanding what David claimed to have witnessed. The bright LED light illuminated the undercarriage of the sedan, revealing the complex network of hoses, cables, and metal components that most drivers never see. "Right there," David said, pointing to an area near the brake line. "See how there are fresh tool marks on that fitting? And look at this." He directed the light to show small metal shavings scattered on the garage floor beneath the car. Marcus leaned in closer, his business acumen shifting into analytical mode as he examined the evidence. While he wasn't a mechanic, the scratches on the metal components did appear recent, and the debris pattern suggested someone had indeed been working under his vehicle. Robert arrived just as Marcus was pulling out his own phone to call building security. "David, what's going on here?" the custodian asked, though his tone carried pride rather than criticism. His son had always been observant and willing to help others, traits that Robert had tried to instill despite their financial struggles. "I'm trying to help this gentleman, Dad," David replied, explaining what he had witnessed to both men simultaneously. Marcus found himself impressed by the teenager's clear communication and the respectful way he interacted with his father. The CEO's call to security yielded quick results. Within minutes, 2 uniformed guards arrived with a company mechanic who worked on the fleet vehicles. The mechanic's examination confirmed David's observations. The brake lines had been partially severed in a way that would have caused complete failure after a few miles of driving. The sabotage was sophisticated enough to avoid immediate detection but would have resulted in a catastrophic accident once Marcus reached the busy streets outside the downtown area. As the reality of the situation sank in, Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm brewing outside. Someone had deliberately tried to kill him, and without David's intervention, they would likely have succeeded. The teenager had potentially saved his life, yet Marcus realized he didn't even know the young man's name until he heard Robert call him David. The CEO looked at father and son with new eyes, seeing past their work uniforms to recognize the character and integrity that had motivated David to speak up when he could have simply minded his own business and continued with his deliveries. As police officers arrived to process the crime scene, Marcus found himself in the surreal position of giving a statement while standing next to the custodian and teenager who had potentially saved his life. Detective Sarah Chin methodically photographed the sabotaged brake lines and collected evidence while questioning all 3 men about the evening's events. David provided a detailed description of the saboteur, a middle-aged man in dark clothing who had approached the vehicle with purpose and the right tools for the job. The teenager's observational skills impressed both the detective and Marcus, who was beginning to understand that he had seriously underestimated the people who worked around him every day. During the investigation, Marcus learned more about the Williams family than he had discovered in a decade of sharing the same building with Robert. David was a senior in high school, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while working part-time for the courier service to help with family expenses. His father had been supporting him alone since David's mother passed away 3 years earlier, taking on extra shifts to ensure his son could focus on his studies and have a chance at college. Robert had never missed a day of work in his tenure at Meridian Industries, arriving early and staying late without complaint, his quiet professionalism going largely unnoticed by the executives who benefited from his diligence. The police investigation revealed that the sabotage was likely connected to Marcus's recent business decisions. Meridian Industries had been involved in several high-profile acquisitions that had displaced workers and disrupted established business relationships. Detective Chen explained that they would need to investigate former employees, displaced competitors, and anyone who might harbor resentment against Marcus personally or the company generally. The CEO realized that his success had come at costs he hadn't fully considered, and that his position made him a target for those who felt wronged by corporate decisions. As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself deeply affected by the contrast between David's immediate willingness to help a stranger and his own general obliviousness to the people who worked around him daily. The teenager had risked his own safety by approaching a potentially dangerous situation, motivated solely by a desire to prevent harm to someone he didn't know. Meanwhile, Marcus had to admit that he couldn't name most of the building's support staff, despite their years of reliable service that made his success possible. The storm finally broke as they concluded their statements, rain drumming against the garage's small windows and thunder rolling across the city. Marcus arranged for both Robert and David to be driven home by company security, since David's bicycle would be impractical in the severe weather. As they waited for their ride, Robert quietly thanked Marcus for his consideration, but the CEO found himself feeling that he should be thanking them instead. The evening had revealed character and integrity in places he had never thought to look, while exposing his own blind spots about the community of people who shared his professional world. The attempted murder made front-page news by morning, with reporters eager to cover the dramatic story of corporate sabotage and an unlikely teenage hero. Marcus found himself fielding calls from journalists, board members, and concerned employees while trying to process the previous evening's events. The story that emerged in the media focused on David's quick thinking and bravery, painting him as a young man who had risked his own safety to save a stranger. The coverage also highlighted the Williams family's humble circumstances, with several outlets noting the irony that a custodian's son had saved the CEO's life. Within hours of the story breaking, Meridian Industries was flooded with calls from people wanting to support David and his family. Local businesses offered scholarships, job opportunities, and various forms of assistance to the teenager who had captured the public's imagination. Marcus watched from his office as news vans gathered outside the building, reporters eager to interview the young hero and his father. The CEO found himself simultaneously proud of David's recognition and troubled by his own role in the narrative. He was being portrayed as the wealthy executive saved by the working-class teenager, a dynamic that highlighted social and economic disparities he had rarely considered. The company's board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss both the security implications of the attack and the public relations aspects of the rescue. Several board members expressed concern about the negative attention surrounding Marcus's leadership and the business decisions that might have motivated the sabotage attempt. Others saw opportunity in the positive coverage of David's heroism, suggesting that Meridian Industries could benefit from associating itself more closely with the young man's story. Marcus listened to their discussions with growing discomfort, realizing that even this sincere act of heroism was being viewed through the lens of corporate advantage. Meanwhile, David struggled with his sudden fame, finding it difficult to concentrate on his classes and delivery job as reporters and well-wishers sought him out. The teenager had acted instinctively to help someone in danger, and he was uncomfortable with the attention his good deed had generated. Robert worried about the disruption to their quiet life, though he was proud of his son's recognition. The custodian had always taught David to do the right thing regardless of whether anyone noticed, and the public scrutiny felt overwhelming to both father and son. As Marcus reflected on the media coverage and board discussions, he realized that the evening's events had revealed more than just a threat to his personal safety. The incident had exposed the emotional and social distance he maintained from the people whose work supported his success, and highlighted the assumptions he made about character and worth based on job titles and economic status. David's heroism wasn't remarkable because he was poor or young. It was remarkable because he had chosen to act when action was needed, regardless of personal risk or reward. The CEO began to understand that his company was full of people whose character and capabilities he had never bothered to discover. Marcus made an unprecedented decision to visit the Williams family at their modest apartment across town, driving himself in a rental car while his regular vehicle remained in police custody. The neighborhood was far removed from his usual circles. Older buildings housing working families, small businesses serving local customers, and a sense of community that felt foreign to someone accustomed to corporate environments and exclusive social clubs. As he parked outside their building, Marcus realized he had never been in a neighborhood like this, as anything other than a passenger driving through to somewhere else. Robert answered the door with surprise and invited Marcus into their small but immaculately maintained apartment. The living room doubled as David's study space, with textbooks stacked neatly on a small desk and a laptop that appeared to be several years old but well cared for. Family photographs showed happier times when David's mother was alive, and Marcus could see the love and sacrifice that had shaped their close relationship. The CEO felt humbled by the dignity and warmth of their home, recognizing that wealth and success could be measured in ways he had never considered. During their conversation, Marcus learned about David's academic achievements and his plans for college. The teenager hoped to study engineering, inspired by his fascination with how things work and his desire to solve problems. His part-time job with a courier service had taught him about the city's layout and introduced him to people from all walks of life, experiences that had developed his observational skills and sense of responsibility. David's teachers had consistently praised his character and work ethic, qualities that were evident in how he had handled the previous evening's crisis. Robert shared stories about his work at Meridian Industries, describing his pride in maintaining the building where important business was conducted. The custodian had watched the company grow and change over his decade of employment, observing the stress and pressures that affected everyone from entry-level workers to top executives. He had developed respect for the challenges of leadership while maintaining his own sense of dignity and purpose in his role. Robert had never expected recognition for his work, finding satisfaction in doing his job well and providing for his son's future. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself sharing more about his own background and the pressures of his position than he had intended. The Williams family listened without judgment, offering perspectives that came from their different life experiences. David asked thoughtful questions about business and leadership that revealed his intelligence and curiosity, while Robert provided insights about the company's culture from his unique vantage point. The CEO realized that these conversations were teaching him things about his own organization that board meetings and executive briefings had never revealed. The visit concluded with Marcus feeling that he had received far more than he had given. The Williams family had welcomed him into their home and shared their perspectives without asking for anything in return. Their kindness and wisdom had provided him with new ways of thinking about success, leadership, and the responsibilities that came with his position. As he drove back to his own affluent neighborhood, Marcus understood that the previous evening had initiated changes in his worldview that would extend far beyond improved security measures and grateful acknowledgement of David's heroism. The following Monday, Marcus called an all-hands company meeting, something that hadn't occurred in the 5 years since Meridian Industries had grown beyond the point where everyone could fit in a single room. Employees packed the main conference hall and connected virtually from satellite offices, curious about what their CEO might announce in the wake of the weekend's dramatic events. Marcus had spent the entire weekend thinking about his conversation with the Williams family and questioning assumptions he had held about leadership, success, and the value of different types of work. "I want to tell you about someone who has worked in this building for 10 years, Marcus began, his prepared speech abandoned in favor of speaking from his heart. Someone who arrives early and stays late, who takes pride in his work, and who has never asked for recognition or special treatment. Someone whose dedication and character have made this company a better place every single day, though most of us have never taken the time to notice." The audience stirred with curiosity as Marcus described Robert Williams, many employees recognizing the custodian they passed in the hallways, but few knowing his name or story. Marcus then spoke about David, describing not just his heroic actions, but his academic achievements, work ethic, and the character that had motivated him to speak up when he saw potential danger. The CEO challenged his audience to consider how many people they worked alongside every day without truly seeing them, and how much talent and wisdom might be overlooked when judgments are made based on job titles rather than individual merit. His words resonated throughout the room as employees began to reflect on their own interactions and assumptions. The announcement that followed surprised everyone, including the board members who had not been consulted in advance. Marcus declared that Meridian Industries would be establishing a comprehensive scholarship program for the children of all company employees, regardless of their parents' position or salary level. Additionally, the company would create new pathways for internal advancement, ensuring that talent and character would be recognized and rewarded throughout the organization. The initiative would be funded by Marcus personally, representing a significant portion of his own wealth. But the changes went beyond financial commitments. Marcus announced that the company's leadership structure would be modified to include representatives from every level of the organization, giving voice to perspectives that had previously been excluded from decision-making processes. He spoke about the importance of understanding the full impact of corporate decisions on all stakeholders, not just shareholders and executives. The CEO acknowledged that the previous evening's events had revealed blind spots in his own leadership that needed to be addressed. The response from employees was immediate and emotional. Many were moved to tears by the recognition of their colleagues' worth and the promise of new opportunities for their children. The custodial staff, cafeteria workers, security guards, and other support personnel found themselves acknowledged and valued in ways they had never experienced. David's heroism had catalyzed a transformation that would benefit hundreds of families and fundamentally change the culture of Meridian Industries. The weeks following Marcus's announcement brought both celebration and challenges as the company began implementing its new initiatives. The scholarship program received over 200 applications within the first month, revealing the educational aspirations that existed throughout the Meridian Industries workforce. Stories emerged of single parents working multiple jobs to support their children's dreams, of talented young people whose potential had been constrained by financial limitations, and of families who had never dared hope for opportunities that suddenly seemed within reach. David Williams became the program's first recipient, accepting a full scholarship to the State University's engineering program along with a paid internship at Meridian Industries. The teenager handled his sudden change in circumstances with the same grace and humility he had shown during the parking garage incident, using his platform to advocate for other students facing similar challenges. His acceptance speech at the scholarship ceremony moved many to tears as he spoke about his father's sacrifices and the importance of recognizing worth in unexpected places. However, not everyone embraced the changes Marcus had initiated. Several board members expressed concern about the financial commitments and questioned whether the CEO was making emotional decisions rather than sound business choices. Some shareholders worried that the company's resources were being diverted from profit maximization to social programs that might not generate measurable returns. A few executives grumbled privately about the new leadership structure, feeling that their authority was being diluted by including lower-level employees in strategic discussions. Marcus faced his strongest opposition during a heated board meeting where 3 directors threatened to call for his removal if he continued what they termed his misguided philanthropy. The CEO listened to their arguments about fiduciary responsibility and shareholder value, but responded by presenting data that surprised his critics. Employee satisfaction scores had reached all-time highs, productivity was increasing across all departments, and the company was attracting top talent who were drawn to Meridian Industries' inclusive culture and commitment to social responsibility. The transformation wasn't without its growing pains. Some long-term employees struggled to adapt to the new collaborative approach, having grown comfortable with hierarchical structures that clearly define their roles and responsibilities. Others worried that increased opportunities for advancement would create competition where none had existed before. Marcus and his leadership team worked to address these concerns through training programs, town halls, and individual conversations that helped people understand the benefits of the cultural shift. Robert Williams found his own role evolving as Marcus frequently sought his perspective on company policies and employee concerns. The custodian's insights proved valuable in identifying problems that might never reach the executive level through traditional channels. His quiet wisdom and deep understanding of the workforce made him an effective advocate for employees at all levels. Robert approached these new responsibilities with the same dedication he brought to his custodial duties, proving that leadership could emerge from anywhere in the organization when it was recognized and supported. 6 months after the parking garage incident, the police investigation finally yielded results that shocked everyone involved. The saboteur was identified as Thomas Mitchell, a former Meridian Industries executive who had been terminated 2 years earlier following a financial scandal. Mitchell had blamed Marcus personally for his disgrace and had spent months planning his revenge, studying the CEO's routines and looking for the perfect opportunity to strike. His arrest brought closure to the criminal case, but also highlighted the human costs of corporate decisions that Marcus was still learning to fully understand. The resolution of the criminal investigation coincided with remarkable developments in the company's performance. Meridian Industries reported record profits for the quarter, driven largely by increased innovation and productivity that analysts attributed to improved employee engagement and retention. The scholarship program had generated positive media coverage that enhanced the company's reputation and attracted new customers who wanted to do business with socially responsible organizations. David's story continued to inspire others, and he had become an unofficial spokesperson for the power of speaking up when witnessing potential wrongdoing. David's freshman year at the university exceeded all expectations as he excelled in his engineering courses while maintaining his part-time internship at Meridian Industries. The young man's professors were impressed by his practical problem-solving skills and his ability to bridge theoretical concepts with real-world applications. His experience working various jobs had given him insights into how systems functioned that proved valuable in his academic work. David remained humble about his achievements, crediting his father's influence and the opportunities that Marcus had provided. The transformation at Meridian Industries had attracted attention from other companies seeking to replicate its success. Marcus found himself invited to speak at conferences about inclusive leadership and the business value of recognizing talent at all organizational levels. He shared the story of David and Robert Williams, emphasizing that the real lesson wasn't about heroism in crisis situations, but about the everyday character and capability that existed throughout their workforce, once leaders learned to see it. However, the most significant consequence was personal rather than professional. Marcus discovered that his relationship with his own employees had fundamentally changed as he made efforts to know them as individuals rather than just job functions. He learned about their families, their dreams, their challenges, and their perspectives on the business they all shared. These relationships enriched his understanding of leadership and gave him a sense of purpose that transcended financial success. The anniversary of the parking garage incident approached, and Marcus realized that what had initially seemed like a random act of violence had actually been the catalyst for the most meaningful period of growth in his life. David's warning had saved his physical life, but the conversations and relationships that followed had transformed his understanding of what it meant to live a life of significance. The CEO, who had once measured success solely through stock prices and profit margins, now understood that true achievement required building a legacy that lifted others as it advanced his own goals. 1 year after David Williams had saved his life, Marcus stood before the largest gathering in Meridian Industries history as the company celebrated the anniversary of what employees had come to call Recognition Day. The event honored not just David's heroism but the broader transformation that had followed, recognizing employees at every level who had contributed to the company's success through their dedication, innovation, and character. The celebration had become an annual tradition that reinforced the values and culture that now define the organization. David, now a sophomore in engineering school, delivered the keynote address with the same earnestness and humility that had characterized his first warning in the parking garage. He spoke about the importance of speaking up when something seems wrong, regardless of whether others are watching or whether recognition will follow. His message resonated with an audience that had learned to value moral courage alongside technical competence and business acumen. The young man had grown into a role model whose influence extended far beyond his heroic moment. Robert Williams was honored with a special award recognizing his decade of exemplary service and his contributions to the company's cultural transformation. The custodian's elevation to the role of employee advocate had formalized his function as a bridge between management and workers, ensuring that all voices were heard in organizational decisions. His quiet dignity and genuine care for his colleagues had made him one of the most respected figures in the company, proving that leadership was defined by character rather than title. The scholarship program had expanded to serve over 500 students, creating opportunities that were transforming entire families and communities. Recipients had gone on to excel in fields ranging from medicine and law to technology and education, carrying forward the values of hard work, integrity, and service that the Williams family exemplified. The program had become a model for other organizations seeking to make meaningful differences in their communities while building stronger, more committed workforces. Marcus reflected on how his own definition of success had evolved since that stormy evening in the parking garage. The financial metrics that had once been his primary focus remained important, but they were now balanced by measures of employee satisfaction, community impact, and personal fulfillment. He had learned that sustainable success required building relationships based on mutual respect and shared values, recognizing that every individual had something valuable to contribute when given the opportunity. As the celebration concluded, Marcus walked through the same parking garage where everything had changed. The space looked identical to that evening a year earlier, but his perspective had been permanently altered. He thought about the countless interactions and decisions that might seem insignificant in isolation but could collectively determine whether an organization fostered greatness or merely achieved adequacy. David's warning had saved his life, but the relationships and insights that followed had shown him how to make that life meaningful. The CEO understood that true leadership meant creating environments where heroism like David's could emerge from anywhere and where every person's contribution was valued and recognized. The transformation that began with a teenager's urgent shout in a parking garage had become a legacy that would benefit generations of employees and their families, proving that extraordinary change could begin with the simple act of one person choosing to care about another's welfare.